Chapter 26 The True Queen. Silenda did not know who she was anymore. She was no longer the Ethicica. The Ascialado Grigio had been stolen from her. She was not really the princess anymore either. Her parents were dead, but she had not yet been crowned queen, and a usurper sat on her throne. Besides, she did not feel like a queen. She was not her grandmother, wise and strong-willed, nor her mother, dauntless and unyielding, nor even her father with his quiet authority. She was a silly little girl, interested only in useless knowledge like history and philosophy, rather than the business of politics. Lady Quinia affectionately said that her moral compass was too strong for politics. Silenda did not even have the Ascialado Grigio's wisdom anymore. She was useless, just a silly girl with useless knowledge, and one who had done nothing to stop the man who would destroy her kingdom. It did not help that Ethicica, who had mostly stopped her incoherent mumblings, but was certainly still healing, both physically and emotionally, had started calling her Queen Silenda when they were alone. One day, 3 people came to Old Sillery. They were Ozinin, 2 of them, an old woman and her son, low class. The other one, also an old woman, middle class. The women were old enough to have been Silenda's age during the time of Nice. The man was old enough to be Silenda's father. They asked to speak with Lady Quinia, who agreed once she was free. She led them inside and checked for listeners. "We're alone," Lady Quinia said, "and I believe there is someone here you'd rather see." The middle-class woman sighed with relief. "Thank goodness! They are safe, then." She had dropped her middle-class Ozinin accent in favor of a high-class Cineran accent. "She is, though the death of her parents has affected her greatly," said Lady Quinia. "He could be dead, for all I know. I'd look for him in Jarissa, or perhaps Riska." "Jarissa, I believe," the woman, via Silenda, said. "I may have seen them at the execution. With an escort, of course." The other old woman, Ilzisnia, smiled. "One of them was a pretty girl his age. Give it a few years, and I'm sure they'll be married." Vildirmos frowned. "I've lost count of how many times you said that about a girl and me, and Father Mishgizmo and a girl. I was right once for both of you, though, weren't I?" Vildirmos smiled a little, though there was some sadness to it. "I guess you were." "Well, a wife would be good for him," Via Silenda said, also smiling a little. "He needs someone to keep him in line. Besides, it is about time they started giving me great-grandchildren." She looked up. "So where is she?" "In Ethicica's room," Lady Quinia said. "I'll go ask if you can see them in there." She went to Ethicica's room. Ethicica was awake, but looked distant and her gaze was a little unfocused. Silenda was sitting by her bed, knitting. Lady Quinia told them Silenda had visitors, and asked if it was all right for them to be received in Ethicica's room. Ethicica adjusted the cap she wore to hide her lack of hair, but said it was all right with her. Silenda wondered why she was fine with this, but had always rejected Agri's requests to see her, despite enjoying his soup. The visitors came inside. Silenda smiled and hugged her grandmother. "Masica! Thank goodness you are safe," she said. "I can say the same to you, Lentakisa," Via Silenda said. "Miasica, could you find some chairs for them?" Silenda said. Lady Quinia nodded and looked at Ethicica. "Are you sure you're all right with this?" Ethicica nodded, but did not smile. "I'm fine, Madhya." Lady Quinia found some chairs, and the visitors sat. Silenda looked at her grandmother. "So why are you here?" she asked. "I saw what happened, and wanted to make sure you were all right," Via Silenda said. She gasped, and Ethicica looked up. "You were there?" Via Silenda nodded. "I had to at least watch as they killed my daughter. She stopped. "I would like to think she knew I was there, and that I loved her." She sighed. "I cannot believe that the last thing I said to her was that I was ashamed to call her my daughter." Ilzisnia put a hand on her shoulder. "We've all done things we regret, Silenda." "I know, and what she did to Fiesel was not right, but I wish I could have told her something else. I hope, at least, that Beyond will forgive her," Via Silenda said. Silenda nodded. "I have been praying for it every day. I hope they were allowed to go to confession." She sighed. It is not just that they are dead. Without them, I do not know who I am anymore. Am I really still the princess if my mother has died? Ethicica looked up and shook her head. You're the queen. Silenda fidgeted, and her grandmother smiled a little. That is quite ironic. You fought against my daughter once, did you not? I support my country, not the queen's sins, Ethicica murmured. But didn't want her dead. Silenda sighed. I do not think any of us did. For all my scolding, I did love her. It was because of my love for her that I did that. To love someone, truly love them, is to wish good for them. I criticized my daughter because I wanted her to become better. Silenda nodded. I did as well. I did not agree with all she did, but she was my mother, and I loved her. She sighed. But if she could not do this well, how can I? I have not your strength, Masika. I cannot inspire the same respect as Bosico, and I have not Musa's iron will. I will never be half the queen you were. Your mother was obdurate. Your father chose violence as a solution a bit too often, and I have many emotional scars, Silenda pointed out. Silenda frowned. Violence? Silenda smiled a bit. You were not with me after the scandal with Duke Garendo. A smile tugged at Ethicica's lips, which was now often the closest she got to actually smiling. Spent a month asking Madya to kill him. Wanted to run him over with Nick, make it look like an accident. I suppose that sounds like him, said Silenda. Silenda nodded. And that was not the first nor the last time. Her face became serious again. Now, an imposing form and long military career is not the only way to earn respect. You are quite intelligent and have a great philosophical mind. I am silly, only want to learn useless things, and cannot read a room or handle a party. Usually she was exhausted less than an hour in and went to her room or the library. Miradello has most of those traits as well. Miradello betrayed us. Silenda blinked. Did he? Silenda nodded. According to Ethicica? Ethicica nodded. He did. Or the Kohi. I see, said Silenda. Well, you have strengths. You will not be a perfect queen. None of us are. But I am sure you will lead this country well if you can learn that you have strength and use it. Silenda nodded. I suppose I will try. That is not enough, Lenthakisa. You must do this. Then I will. I will free my country, Silenda said. Good. And who are you? The girl took a deep breath, then looked up, her face resolute. I am Silenda Miadelia Magria Jarissa King, true queen of Quinia. Silenda smiled. Good, Lenthakisa. Now, if you are to defeat the Jarissa King, there is something you must know. She took a deep breath and held out her right hand, then took off her glove. Slashed across her palm was a scar, one similar to what would eventually form across Ethicica and Lanczú's hands. Queen Silenda, Ilzisnia, and Vildirmos gasped. Ethicica pushed herself up to see and gasped as well, her eyes going wide. Blood magic, she whispered. Please tell me that is from broken pottery and not the reason you always wear gloves, Queen Silenda said. Silenda sighed. I wish it were, but it is not. After I made that sacrifice to Queen Mikya, the Jarissa King came to my room and... She blinked. He bound our lives together. If he dies, then so will I. Oh dear, said Queen Silenda. Masika, I need you. I already lost my parents. I cannot lose you. Then your best chance is to put his soul in something, as Elinsco, Queen Mikya, and I did, Silenda told her. Queen Silenda nodded. I see. Good. Then we must go. It is dangerous for us to stay here too long. All right. Is Garokiso safe? Ilzisnia smiled. Looks like it. I think he's found a girl he likes. She looked up. He has? Ilzisnia nodded. A Jarissan girl, I think. Queen Silenda sighed. There go my hopes of him getting a wife who will keep him in line. We do not know that. I am sure plenty of Jarissan girls can control their impulses, and his as well, said Silenda. And he is only 15. He has plenty of time to find one. Queen Silenda inclined her head. I suppose. She looked up. Well, goodbye. Silenda nodded. Goodbye, Lentakisa. Goodbye, Ilzisnia said. Viodormos smiled. Goodbye, Queen Silenda. Jarissa smiled. Actually smiled. Viodormos, Ilzisnia, and Silenda left and went back to Bori. Most had returned there, not seeing much difference between the state there and the state in Ardera, besides the fact that Arderans were significantly more likely to make fun of them for being Beraden. On the night before he reached Miravine, Lanczú was visited in his dreams. He had gotten one earlier from his stepsister, but he liked her much better than this one. He was sitting at a table, with his feet chained to the chair, and a plate of food in front of him. It was full of good food, fresh bread, and rich soup. After about 2 weeks of being in the dungeon, living off stale bread and broth. It was always made with chicken stock, though, and that made Lanczú think the guards were trying to help him in some way. And 2 days of whatever could be made from what supplies they had, the smell of it made Lanczú's mouth water. He would have eaten it if it were not for 2 things. First, it was a dream, and second, Garendo was at the other end of the table. Lanczú immediately pushed himself away from the table and tried to get to his feet. He almost fell into his soup because of his chains and sat back down, crossing his arms. Well, that was quite rude, lad, Garendo said. Lanczú crossed his arms. You're the one invading my mind. Because it was a dream, his head felt clearer and his wounds did not hurt as much. This could be dangerous, though. Someone's mind was more vulnerable in his dreams. If Lanczú was not careful, Garendo could find out who had freed him and where he was going. Luckily, Luz Maroja had taught him how to protect himself and put up a mental wall around his thoughts. When she tried to teach him, he had not seen the point, but had learned anyway. Now he was glad he had. I'll give you that, but you ran away. I just wanted to make sure you're all right, Garendo said. Sure, that's what you want. Not figuring out where I went, Lanczú said. I don't, lad, Garendo said. I don't care where you go. That Soledo couldn't get your friend or died trying, so I don't want to use you for bargaining. Besides, I don't think Ethicica stopped what she was doing to you. At least you're not being tortured anymore, even if you're still trying to kill me. We'll still try, but I really have other things to be doing. The boy doesn't have a hand anyway. Luz Maroja had also taught Lanczú how to read someone else's thoughts and how to do it without letting him know his own thoughts. If Garendo was lying, he hid it well. So well that it did not look like he was hiding anything. Lanczú rolled his eyes. Oh, stop acting like you care about what she did to me. You didn't do nothing to stop it. You see, until last week, she was the only Soledo leader I had. I couldn't do much to punish her, or it would risk losing my allies. Now, Lady Quinia has promised her support, so I can. Oh, great. So now I can torture her, Lanczú said. I said punish. Lanczú rolled his eyes again. Right. I've been dealing with what she thinks is punishment the past 3 weeks. She almost blinded me for trying to escape. Well, half-blinded, but the point still stood. Which she shouldn't have done. So we agree on something. That don't change all the terrible things you've done. Almost wiped out the Soledo and Soledo, tried to kill my friend, cut off his hand, killed the king and queen in Violentas Bob and Lucian the Fourth, and just let Ethicica do all those things to me, Lanczú said. A shadow passed over Garendo's face when Lucian the Fourth was mentioned. Garendo paused. After the lad collapsed, I wasn't going to kill him, just capture him. Right, then let Ethicica torture him till he was sick and half dead, Lanczú said. Garendo paused again. Well, that wasn't the plan, but she probably would have. And you'd have just sat there and let her, just like you did with me, Lanczú said, his voice dripping with contempt. Until Lady Quinia gave her support,
Yes, I wouldn't have been able to do much to stop her, Garendo said. I hate her torturing my prisoners, but I need her help.
Lanczú rolled his eyes. Great. He looked up. You say you should be king because you're better, and you can't even stop one of the people who tried to bring you back from torturing people. Garendo's eyes narrowed.
I am the rightful king of Quinia, lad.
No, you ain't, Lanczú snapped. The king is whoever Queen Silenda marries. And Lanczú would like that man a little less than he liked Garendo.
No, lad. Silenda of 100 years took the throne from me, so when I came back, I reclaimed it. I did again now,
Garendo said. His tone was starting to have an edge to it. You shouldn't have gotten it in the first place, Lanczú said. You stole it!
You don't understand.
I know enough to, Lanczú said. You wanted power, so you stole it. You weren't there, Garendo shouted. Lanczú pressed himself against the back of his chair, his eyes wide. The only time he had heard Garendo raise his voice was to get someone's attention in a loud room, or when Lord Gageloso made any sort of aggressive or disparaging gesture or comment towards Menyosinho. Garendo took a deep breath and ran a hand through his hair.
I'm sorry about that, lad,
he said. His voice was quieter now, but still had an edge to it.
But King Lucian,
contempt dripped from his voice when he said that name,
was the worst one since the gambler. He neglected everyone, the peasants, the mountains, the north, the Michki, the Sirode, the Soledo, anyone who wasn't his rich little circle of tax-paying nobles. You have no idea what it was like living in the mountains then. We were practically a part of Tonatera. The pirates were ruling better than him.
So you decided to kill him, Lanczú said icily. And don't act like you helped no one. Even now, I can see that Michka's still hurting Menyosinho. Maybe you'd notice it too, if you actually looked at him. Garendo's gaze hardened.
Well, maybe there's a reason behind that, lad, he said, an equal amount of ice in his tone. Maybe when I look at him, I see a different boy. I see a tall boy, with hair the color of flame and eyes like the sun before it sets. He sobs into his mother's skirts, then screams until his throat burns when she's dragged away from him. He bites and claws when his hair is cut off. He is hit for speaking without permission, whatever that means, because it seems to change every time. Beaten for speaking with too heavy an accent, until all that remains of the language he first learned are a few songs he sings curled on the floor by his bed while he tries to stop crying. Songs he's forgotten the meaning of, which make him cry worse, because they make him think of warmth and safety, two things he barely remembers.
His image flickered, switching from the one Lanczú knew to that of a little boy with his hair cut short and a collar around his neck, then back again.
A boy who clings to every woman he can find until he is dragged away from her as well, until he stops trying, though he wishes he could. He never stops longing for her. When the rescue comes, he fights, he panics, wanting to go back, terrified of his punishment, unable to comprehend any life besides the one he has lived for the past 8 years. When his body go to embrace him, he pushes them away, because he has learned that this is something he will never have. He will just be dragged away from them too. He still sounds like a foreigner in any language he tries to speak, still panics when he cries, expecting a beating.
His voice had started to tremble, and he stopped, taking a deep breath and closing his eyes. He opened them, his face calm again.
Do you know who that boy is?
Supposed to be you, ain't it? Lanczú said. But you're lying. That ain't what happened. Your parents died, and you lived with your Bob sisters and then killed the king. Garendo narrowed his eyes.
Tell me, Elinsco resolution, do you know what happened to my parents?
Lanczú blinked, suddenly feeling a little sick at the sound of his name, much like when Bertrand the mage said it during the blood magic promise. They got sick, didn't they? Lanczú said. Garendo laughed bitterly.
So that's the lie they've been telling. Looks like the great Silenda of 100 years couldn't bear to let people know what her father was really like. She was a wonderful partner for card games, and a good organ student and a fine debater, but she never grew out of a child's view of her father. No, that wasn't what happened. My father was the Jarisse's king before me, and like I said, the mountains were practically a part of Soledo until my terra. Well, he got fed up with that and tried to throw them out, he said. Legend said that Queen Silenda of 100 Years and Garendo had spent the 100-year anarchy playing card games, playing organ, and debating, with not much else to do, trapped in a realm outside of time. Though in all that time, they had never been able to find any sort of compromise on their respective stances. His tone darkened. It didn't work. I watched my father die in front of me. I clung to my mother every moment of our journey until I was finally dragged away screaming. When I was sold, I was 5. When I returned, I was 13. And how did I return? Did the king send a party to rescue the stolen king of the Jarisse? Did he do anything to help us in those 8 years? Spare even a cent of his partying budget? He laughed again. Of course not! The only people who were there to help were the tyrants. And how do you think that went? We're great warriors, but fighting isn't the only skill you need to rescue a slave, and the Dioleran road had been thrown into chaos. The friars were quite helpful. They might have rescued me, but we lost quite a few of the team. He sighed. I learned all of their names. I never stopped praying for them. I chose the name Jarisse in honor of the Diolerans who helped me. You all say I'm a heretic, but I had nothing else to hold on to, and no one to learn from. What should I have done? Lanczú had never heard any of that, but he could not sense any lies. Either Garendo was so good at lying that he had not only been able to hide the truth, but also make it look like he was not hiding anything, or Lanczú had been lied to. He had heard that Queen Silenda of 100 Years was close to her father, so it was not inconceivable that she would try to cover up his failings, and he had wondered where that name came from. He had never heard of a house called Jarisse. Garendo looked up. So when they came back, and I saw what a mess this place was, I decided I would do something. I decided I'd had enough. I, a boy of not even 17, who'd spent more time as a slave than a king or a prince, was a better king than Lanczú ever was. So I was going to take his place. He couldn't rule Quinia, so I could. There were a few seconds of silence. Then Lanczú broke it. So you killed him, and started a war that almost destroyed the Soledo, Soledo, and Jarisse. Garendo met his eyes. I did what I had to do. What about now? Lanczú said. You're fighting your own people. And why should you keep the throne anyway? We were doing just fine before you showed up, both now and back with the Jarissa King. Worry, lad. The aristocracy was even more corrupt and lazy when my Riskan friend attacked than it was in my day, and the soldiers were a joke. A stern glare was enough for them to panic and surrender. And now you were in the middle of a civil war, and the late Queen Silenda, she was more stubborn than her fool son. We were gonna end it, and you weren't that bad. Garendo laughed. Not that bad. Really. She was worse than that town Ethicica grew up in with how she treated the Soledo. At least they say what they think. As for ending the war, then what would you have done? Kill everyone who didn't support the Queen, when she was the one who was acting like they were enemies instead of allies, when she didn't do anything to help the Soledo and Silendite towns who were being mistreated, when she threw a girl, a very good friend of yours, in the dungeon essentially because she was half Soledo. Not even young Akiso ever went that far. And as for the restorer, her father was a joke of a king. The only good thing he ever did for the kingdom was marry that Boredin and reunite Quinia, Garendo said. Lanczú said nothing. He would never say it, but Garendo had a point. What about the Jarisse now? Lanczú said. Like I said earlier, lad, Garendo said, I'm doing what I have to. I can't let the country stay divided. If they're going to fight us, then I'll have to defend. Hypocrite, Lanczú muttered. Garendo's glare was the last thing he saw in that dream. For some reason, it was terrifying. He was a soldier and had seen plenty of scary things. He had fought for his life several times, and was all too familiar with what Ethicica could do with her knife. The glare of the Jarissa King, though, that was different. It was intense, that yellow gaze seeming to bore into him, as much as any knife or sword he had gotten on the wrong end of. Lanczú woke, sweating and gasping. murmuring about Garendo and his fear that he had learned something, until he realized Zebbocron was glaring at him for mentioning too many specific details about who they were, and he stopped, trying to calm himself down. When the man taking them to Soravino stopped to go into town and buy some food, Zebbocron sat by Lanczú and looked down at him. Lanczú frowned. "Oh, not you," he said. "Oh, be quiet," Zebbocron said. "You were murmuring when you woke up." "I think I remember that," Lanczú said. "What was I saying?" "You—" He paused and glanced up, then whispered. "You were talking about Garendo. I believe I heard 'he knows' in there." Lanczú flinched at Garendo's name. "Oh," he sighed. "He came to me in my dream." Zebbocron slapped his forehead. "He what?" he hissed, though he wanted to scream it. "I dreamed about him," Lanczú said. He pinched the bridge of his nose. "Oh, why?" "Didn't tell him nothing," Lanczú said. "Really? You are half delirious, which here refers to the amount of time you spend in delirium. Borgno were able to keep all your secrets in a dream from a powerful, centuries-old mage." Lanczú glared at him. "Don't call me that." "Why not? It is accurate. Anyway, how exactly did you manage to get through that without letting him know anything?" "A friend taught me," Lanczú said. Zebbocron rolled his eyes. "Sure, some Borgna knows." Lanczú glared at him. "Don't call her that," he said. "And yes, she does. Knows a lot. Taught me how. And he weren't trying to figure out where I'd gone. If anything, he told me things." "All lies, I am sure," Zebbocron said. "I don't think so," Lanczú said. "She also taught me how to find out if he's lying." He frowned. "He talked about why he did what he did, killing King Lucian and everything, but it didn't sound nothing like what I've learned." "Quite a low bar." Lanczú rolled his eyes. "He said that when he was a boy, Tonatara and Soledo were riding into Jarisse a lot, so his bulb tried to stop them." "His father?" Zebbocron said, frowning. "I thought his mother was the one born to Jarissa." "So did I," Lanczú said. "He said that Queen Silenda of 100 years tried to cover up some parts of history. I have heard she was close with her father, and Derrière did remove their men from the line of succession. Perhaps they tried to change some of their previous kings into queens. Or, more likely, he's lying. I am sure he is quite good at it, not to mention a mage. He probably knows how to hide that he is lying, even in his dreams." "Could be. Even if I didn't know how to tell if he's lying, it didn't seem like one. He got mad at me. Actually raised his voice. Didn't look like he was hiding nothing neither," Lanczú said. "I learned to hide things by building a wall. I think it'd be hard to build a wall people can't see." "Hard, but not impossible. Like I said, he is a skilled mage," Zebbocron said. "I guess," Lanczú said. "In any case, the part about the raids is certainly true. Even someone like you should know that when the double war ended, we were forced to allow them to raid as much as they wanted." Lanczú rolled his eyes. "What else did he say?" Zebbocron asked. Lanczú frowned and told him what Garendo had said about his father trying to get rid of Valeda and Tonatara, and what had happened to him after. His words had started slurring, or slurring worse, at least. Zebbocron thought for a bit. "Well, if he is telling the truth, it certainly explains a lot. The only time I have seen him visibly angry is when the Lord Roseno hits or snaps at his servant." "He got a name, you know," Lanczú said. "Ismeniosinio." Zebbocron nodded. "I did not know what it was. I have never heard anyone use it. Anyway, I know the Jarisse are rather riskin in their approach to servants, but I found it a little strange he has none, especially when I am sure there is no shortage of volunteers. I suppose this explains it." Lanczú smiled. "Rather riskin? That's one way to put it." "Good to see prison has not dulled your humor," Zebbocron said with a slight smile. "Anyway, he also seems to do a lot of his own dirty work, especially compared to, say, Lord Gageloso. He don't do none of it. No, he does not, he said. Of course, this could also be explained by the Jarisse's general approach to such matters, and not to mention he was born in the middle of the Double War, which, in case you do not know, ended quite badly for us. Lanczú rolled his eyes. Course I know that. Surprising, he said. He frowned. When did you say the tyrants captured him? When he was 5. Zebbocron looked thoughtful. He was born in 615, and the war went from... That would have been just after the Double War ended, and he was born in the middle of it. It is quite possible that what he remembers as the king neglecting his province when he was a child was actually just being born in the middle of a war. After he returned, though... Well, even if he is exaggerating how bad King Luchon was, and no one denies that he was a weak ruler, I do doubt that a 13-year-old who had spent most of his life as a slave would be able to be an effective ruler, though. Lanczú shrugged. I guess so, but if he's telling the truth about how bad King Luchon was, it wouldn't be no high bar. Miraculously, Zebbocron nodded and said, I suppose so, rather than pointing out Lanczú's double negative. He had been resisting that urge the whole journey, except when he was particularly bored and was fairly certain Lanczú would not remember it. He was usually right. Lanczú at best only vaguely remembered an argument. Lanczú and Zebbocron reached Soravigno on the 3rd Monyedyi, Tralirviesh Eve. Lanczú's condition had not improved. When he had spoken to Zebbocron the morning of his rescue, he had been fueled by surprise and stubbornness. Once he was able to relax a little, the reality of his sickness seemed to crash into him. He had spent most of Hiladyi and Monyedyi drifting between fever dreams and hazy reality. He often slurred his words, saw things, mumbled to himself, or did not know where he was. Once he had mistaken Zebbocron for Elinsco. Multiple times, Zebbocron had hissed at him for mentioning too many names. When Zebbocron shook Lanczú awake, he just mumbled in protest. Zebbocron tried again to similar results, so just picked him up after taking his cloak back. He let Lanczú keep the hat because it was not too expensive, and so he could hide his inconveniently bright hair without looking suspicious. Lanczú fought him, thrashing and shouting. Zebbocron and the man who had taken him to Soravigno tried in vain to calm him down, and the former was worried he would drop the boy. A somewhat short girl, though still taller than Elinsco, noticed them and gasped, then went over as fast as she could while leading her horse. Her round face was framed by red-brown curls, and her brown eyes were wide. She had flowers in her hair instead of wearing a kerchief, like an Alain girl. My goodness! She exclaimed as she looked down at Lanczú. She had a Baredan accent. Lanczú stopped at the sound of her voice and the sight of her face. A smile spread across his face, and he relaxed. Los Maraja, he slurred. She looked up. Is that... She trailed off. Zebbocron nodded. It is him, he said, trying to cover some of his accent up. Los Maraja fidgeted. He all right? The man with the cart told her that Lanczú was injured and it had been infected badly. Zebbocron nodded, then looked at the girl. So, you are the famous Luzmisha Roja. The girl nodded, blushing a little. Hey, mention me? Zebbocron nodded. Several times. I believe at one point I heard La Consacrance. Luz Maroja's blush brightened to a shade several times more vivid than Garento's hair. Lanczú had not really heard him. He was just looking at Luz Maroja. Oh, goodness, Zebbocron muttered. He looked at her again. He overstated your beauty. Luz Maroja looked down. Anything would be hyperbole. Hyperbole? Now where did someone like her learn that? Zebbocron thought. Lanczú shook his head slowly. Zebbocron frowned. Are you his cousin? He asked. Luz Maroja blinked. What now? Surprising, Zebbocron said. Father Jonfau noticed them and came over. Duchess Jacinthelia had asked him to bless her house, and he had just returned from that. In the meantime, the parochial vicar of Miravine's cathedral had been there to say La Carria and hear confessions. Good afternoon, Father Jonfau called. He looked at Lanczú. This boy injured. Zebbocron nodded, and the man he was traveling with repeated his explanation of Lanczú's illness. Father Chanfau smiled a little, but was greatly concerned. He's heard of me. I'm surprised, but thank you for bringing him here. Would you like to stay here for Jarlirvyesh? Zebbocron looked almost disgusted at the idea. Spend my Jarlirvyesh in this backwater with a couple of peasants in Bochny? Luz Maroja looked up, frowning. She had heard the term in books, but did not think anyone really said it, especially not a noble. A few people had called her that, but it still surprised her. Lanczú was looking at her, though a frown crossed his face at the sound of the word. Father Chanfau's face hardened. It did not come up often, mostly because people had learned what would happen if they used those words, but he hated people saying that word or similar ones to it, and made that fact very clear. He had given multiple homilies on the subject. A few found it ironic, considering who had paid for his education. Get your hands off of him and get out, Father Chanfau said. Gladly, Zebbocron said, giving Lanczú to the priest and looking at his hands like he had accidentally touched something gross. To be fair, Lanczú had only taken one bath in the past 3 weeks, and Brother Carrasco had mostly just been trying to get his wounds clean, 2 of which were spent in a prison cell that had never been cleaned, and had been wearing the same clothes for 3 days after wearing the same clothes for 3 weeks. Lanczú frowned and shifted, worried as he lost sight of Luz Maroja, but calmed down when he saw her again. And now I must go. He looked at Luz Maroja and Father Chanfau. Goodbye, Luz Misha, father. Tell your little brother that I wish him and that Radenta he foolishly loves a long and happy marriage, which I pray will not end with her stabbing him in the back literally or figuratively, he said. He looked at Lanczú. Goodbye, Lucien Izou, he said. He would never admit it, but he was concerned for the boy. He still did not like how Lanczú was berated, but he did not think he deserved this. Zebbocron turned and walked away. The man he was traveling with said goodbye and left. Father Chanfau took Lanczú to the rectory, trailed by Luz Maroja. He showed her where she could leave her horse, and they went inside. The visiting priest was inside and looked up at the sound of the door opening. Good morning, Father, he said. He had a middle-class Ozinin accent. I'm glad you're back. Father Chanfau nodded, smiling a little. I'm glad to be back, and it looks like I'm just in time. He nodded at Lanczú. This boy is very sick. I see, said the other priest. Good thing you're back, then. He stood. I should be getting back, then. Good luck with this boy. I'll be praying for him. And Breocalco and his wife. Thank you, Father, said Father Chanfau, and thank you for doing this while I was gone. The priest nodded. You're welcome, Father. Goodbye. Goodbye, said Father Chanfau. The priest left and returned to Miravine. Father Chanfau set Lanczú down on his extra bed. Do you know him? He asked Luz Maroja as he looked over the boy, after the visiting priest had closed the door. Luz Maroja looked up. Lanczú Risa? Of course I do. Everyone knows him. I mean, we ain't friends, really, more like acquaintances. I'm friends with his stepsister, though. He seems to really like you, he said. She looked down. I guess. Don't know why. He shrugged. Don't ask me. The closest he had ever gotten to courting a girl was when he was 12 and decided that one of the town girls was the most beautiful one to ever exist. Once he had finally gotten the courage to talk to her, years later, she said she wanted to join the Daughters of the Virgin Feralia when she was old enough. After recovering from that rejection, young Chanfau had made up his mind to join the priesthood. He had always felt that he might be called to that, but that was the final push he needed. So do you know why that boy called him Lucio Insel? Father Chanfau asked. She shook her head. Now, do you? He frowned. Maybe. He glanced at her. I'm Father Chanfau. You're Luz Misha? She nodded. Luz Maroja. Well, Luz Maroja, I've got a bath around here somewhere. Can you find it and go fill it? He asked. She nodded. Of course. She stood and started looking around. Lanczú started moving again, mumbling and looking around with wide eyes. Calm down, Lanczú Risa, Father Chanfau said evenly. She's still here. You're safe now. Lanczú shook his head. He was louder, but his words were too slurred to make out. Luz Maroja came back over. Lanczú noticed her and relaxed, smiling again. Father Jeanfin frowned, trying to figure out what would be best. He would certainly need to give Lanczú a bath, but he did not want to do that with a girl present. He sighed. He could see a solution, but he did not exactly love it. He looked through his things until he found a small bottle. He gave some of the contents to Lanczú and waited for the boy to fall asleep, which he did without protest. Father Jeanfin sighed. "Can you find it, please?" he asked. Luz Maroja nodded. She did not love this solution either, but saw why it needed to be done. She did as he asked while he finished looking over Lanczú. Father Jeanfin asked her to leave and gave Lanczú his bath, then cleaned and bandaged his wounds and gave him some extra nightclothes he had. They were far too large for him. Father Jeanfin put him in the extra bed and told Luz Maroja she could come back in. She sat by Lanczú's bed while he cleaned up and then found his siblings and Tafia. He asked Sister Ashadelia to help him wash the clothes Lanczú had been wearing and asked Elinsco and Tafia to look after an injured boy who had arrived. They agreed and split up. Tafia came in and closed the door. They saw Lanczú, gasped, and ran to him. "Lanczú zi Jarissa," Tafia said. Elinsco had gone pale at the sight of him. Tafia took his hand. "He's sleeping," Luz Maroja said. "But shouldn't it be Lanczú Jarissa?" She nodded, smiling a little. "Yes, it's what we call him." Luz Maroja's face reddened a little. "Oh!" Considering she called Evzi Evlija instead of Evzija, she could not really be talking. "So what happened? And what's your name?" Tafia asked. "Luz Maroja." Elinsco and Tafia shared a look, then she nodded. "Oh, you're the girl he loves," Tafia said. Luz Maroja turned roughly the same color as her hair. She and Elinsco shared another look. "Well, I'm Tafia, and this is Elinsco, but you can only call us that when we're alone or with Father Jeanfin or his sister. It's a bit of a long story, but when we ain't alone, you gotta call us Varelia and Gajo," Tafia said. Luz Maroja frowned. "All right." "So what happened?" Tafia asked. "Well, I came from Bombir to look for him," Luz Maroja said. "His ma was very anxious, but she got a baby, and her husband and his children didn't want to leave him, so I said I'd go. I was in Sillery, and a woman mentioned her daughter was friends with a Bavarian named Lanczú. I inquired about him and where he might be. Her only guess was Soledo, but she told me about Father Jeanfin. Soravino was close and on the way to Soledo, so I came here. I saw and heard Lanczú, so ran over. It was with this blonde boy." She looked over at Elinsco. "Looked a little like you, actually, but bigger and with fairer hair. Had an Ozina nobleman's accent and was wearing black and blue." Tafia and Elinsco exchanged confused glances. "What was he like?" Tafia asked. Luz Maroja frowned. "Bit rude. Asked if I was his cousin for some reason, and called us Borni." Tafia and Elinsco blinked in surprise. She tilted her head. "Am I not supposed to say that?" Tafia frowned. "Well, I guess you can, since you're Beraden. I just think it's a bit strange. Lorsqu'on Jarisse, I don't never say it. He just calls it, like, that word, or the word." She nodded. "I see. But I think I might know who it is," Tafia said. She looked over at Elinsco. "But it can't be him, can it? Him saving Lanczú Jarisse?" Elinsco shrugged. It certainly sounded like him. The only other strange thing about it was that he was not wearing gold. "Who?" Luz Maroja asked. Tafia sighed. "This sounds ridiculous, but Lord Zebbocron, son of Duke Garendo, or Zebbocron, as we call him." Luz Maroja blinked, then laughed. "You're right, it does, and I've only ever read about him," she said. "The son of the man who thinks peasants are gross, and a woman who thinks Beradens are all stupid, helping a Beraden, grandson of a farmer who became a merchant, and stepson of a shepherd." Tafia nodded, smiling. Elinsco was smiling as well. It was a real smile. "You're right, it does sound silly, but Other than helping a Beraden, it sure sounds like him. He's always saying Beradens marry their cousins, and Lanczú Jarissa says he thinks the B word is the only name in Bereda, not to mention he's big and blonde. Ethicica says he looks like a bigger, blonder, richer version of him. My Bobo used to work in Miravine, and he always compared them too, especially back when he was young and small. Elinsco nodded. I guess it does line up. I haven't never met him, before today, at least, or even really seen a painting, but I know how his parents are described, Luz Moroja said. Elinsco pointed at Lanczú, and Thefia nodded. You're right, we can ask him when he wakes. Thefia and Luz Moroja talked, and Elinsco added his silent input. Finally, Lanczú began to stir, frowning and shifting. He opened his eye and blinked. Where am I? He said. His words were slurred, but more from sleep than from fever. Luz Moroja, Elinsco, and Thefia looked over and sighed with relief. Oh, you're awake! Thefia said. Lanczú nodded. I am, but where am I? Soravino. This is the rectory. The priest here is helping you, Luz Moroja said. She sighed. I'm sorry we had to make you sleep, but you'd only calm down if I was in the room. Lanczú shook his head, smiling. It's fine. He was relieved. It was finally over. He was mostly safe, back with his friend. Thefia glanced at Elinsco, smiling a little, and he rolled his eyes. So are you all right, Lanczú Jarissa? Thefia asked. Lanczú nodded. I guess. I can think straight. Don't think it'll last long, but I can. And it's Lanczú Jarissa. Elinsco sighed with relief. Thefia smiled and took his hand. I didn't never think I'd be so happy to hear you say that. Lanczú looked up. You just happy to see me again, or did he find you? That Soledo? Yes, he did. She took a deep breath, then let it out. He's dead now, though. Elinsco's expression was grim. Luz Moroja's eyes rounded. Lanczú nodded solemnly. Elinsco indicated his friend's bandages. He's asking what happened, Thefia said. Were you captured? Lanczú nodded. I was. The Azkazar tried to leave, but then Ethicica caught me. The doctor says I shouldn't go blind there, though. Ethicica and the mage did most of this. Gagel also did a bit, too, 'cause he held me back. Thefia sighed. Elinsco wished he could offer a comforting gesture, but was worried about hurting him. My goodness, Luz Moroja said, a bit pale and confused by the names. I'm so sorry, Lanczú Jarissa. Elinsco frowned. Thefia looked up. What is it? He thought for a moment, then pointed to where Azanyelosa was hidden. She thought about it. Magic. Mage? He nodded, then held up 2 fingers. She thought again. Mages. He said mages, not mage. She looked at Lanczú. Did Elinsco and Miradello betray us? Lanczú nodded. Miradello, but not Elinsco. Thefia nodded. Got it. So who was that boy accompanying you? Luz Moroja said. Lanczú smiled. Luz Moroja, when I said I can think straight, I didn't mean I can understand your big words. He could almost hear Zebbocron. She blushed. Sorry. The boy with you? We think it's Lord Josebo Akinson, but it can't be him, can it? Lanczú laughed. It was! Thought I must have been seeing things, but it was. Guess it don't take doing what his Bob did to his servants to make him mad. I guess, but still, he spent the past almost 2 years making fun of you, and he saved you? Thefia said. Lanczú shrugged. He helped Kara. Freed Fiezel, too. Not now, of course, but back then. And there's a letter. Must have been the same thing for me. Thefia inclined her head. I guess that makes sense. He didn't do it for me, Lanczú said. He just don't like the Jarissa King more than he don't like me, and I guess I seemed important. All right, that makes more sense, Thefia said. Elinsco nodded. Thefia looked back at Lanczú. So Zebbocron betrayed us? Lanczú nodded. Bit ironic with what he says about us. He says he just didn't want to die and he's been trying to fight him from the inside. Elinsco smiled a little dryly. So who else? Thefia asked. He frowned. Jarissa, Brialenyo, Evanoska were Ethicica spies. Don't know what happened to Resha. Anyasika. She must have been a spy. Zebbocron says her real name is Iveria. Lady Iveria Dieka Songenta of Old Silvery, called Ethicica, daughter of the late Lucer Mia Fiadelia Songenta, called Lady Luce, and Lord Irinio ile Chironfon Songento. Sororo niece, Lady Quinia Farelia Songenta, Luz Roja said, as if reciting. Lisquantefia blinked. Lanczú smiled. He had forgotten how much he liked that. I was just going to say Ethicica, but I guess that works too, Thefia said. At least that's the first person I can think of, and she matches up with what I've heard and seen. Luz Roja blushed. I'm sorry. That just happens sometimes. You don't gotta be sorry. I like it, Lanczú said. He was impressed by how much she knew. She blushed more. Lisco and Thefia exchanged a glance, wondering if they should leave. Did you get my letter? Luz Roja asked. Lanczú frowned. Not really. I think Ethicica Soledo took it. They knew about my Graglisma. Said I got a sister called Magralusha when they captured me. That's how I found out. Then Varelia Mirgisma found me in her dreams. Told me about it too, and said everyone was safe and you were looking for me. He looked up at her, smiling a little. Says you were blushing when you sent that letter. I'm here now. Want to tell me what it said? She stopped, then sighed and stood. It don't matter. I'm going to see if Father Jean-Fin and his sister need some help. She left. Lanczú sighed. When'll she get it? He said to himself. He looked up. Linksich, Levzija? They looked at him. Yes, Thefia said. He sighed. King Ridero, Queen Silenda. Their eyes rounded. Are they? Thefia said. Lanczú sighed. Dead. Elinsco slumped back in his chair, looking at the hook he had recently replaced his left hand with. Thefia stared at her hands. They had heard rumors, but had not wanted to believe it. Lanczú looked up. It's my fault, he said. I told them they went south. They made me watch. Thefia sighed. No, it's mine too. I left them alone. Elinsco held up his hook. All of ours, I guess, but Elinsco, this don't mean it's all your fault, Thefia said. Elinsco pressed his lips together. She sighed again and took his hand. You all right, with the hand and everything? Lanczú asked Elinsco. Don't think you've said nothing this whole time, but I think you would. Elinsco looked down. We ain't sure what happened, but he can't talk, Thefia said. Father says he's seen something like this before. Sometimes bad things happen and people just stop talking. Lanczú sighed. My goodness, I'm sorry. Elinsco shook his head and pointed at Lanczú. Thefia squeezed his hand. We should be feeling sorry for both of you, she said. Lanczú nodded. I guess. His gaze drifted down. I'm tired. All right, Thefia said, gently brushing his hair out of his face. Should I ask Father to help you shave? Lanczú thought for a moment. No, he said finally. Better for a disguise. They had considered this for Elinsco, but everyone hated how it looked, so they stopped. All right, then should we try to disguise your hair? He nodded. Too bright and too short. He closed his eyes. Elinsco and Thefia stayed with him. When Lanczú woke, he was back in the fog. He, however, had enough strength and sense to loudly resist not going to a Lardafyesh, so they gave up and let him come. Thefia had been working on her glamour the whole day and was able to darken his hair to brown and make it look a little longer. It was already longer than he usually liked, since he had been meaning to cut his hair when Garendo attacked. It would be better to change his appearance naturally, but until she could get her hands on something to color his hair with, this was the best they could do. He might have barely been thinking straight, but he always said this was the best experience he ever had in a church. He had not been prevented from going as long as Kara or Luzmo, but it had felt like an eternity, and finally going back was like coming home. His longing for his mother was less sharp, but still there. After La Carrière, Linsco and Thefia kissed again, for tradition's sake. Lanczú was surprised, but glad they had finally stopped denying it. After Dralurvyesh Day, Sister Ashadelia left to look for her sisters. They were able to rouse Lanczú long enough for him to say goodbye to her. Once Lanczú's escape was noticed, Ethicica assembled a team to question people in Linziso to find out who had helped him and sent out Ilinsa, Brialenio, and Rileza Aria to question suspects outside it. Menzisnones Lisier was in Casero at the time, so they went to him first. He was staying with a friend who found an excuse to leave. They all sat, and Menzisno looked at them flatly. "Right, this about my fool of a grandson." Ilinsa and Brialenio blinked in shock. Rileza Aria just nodded. "Elinsco is your grandson?" Ilinsa said. "Elinsco Riza," Rileza Aria corrected, an edge to her voice. Ilinsa nodded. "Elinsco Riza, sorry." Menzisno nodded. "He is, and it looks like, denying his family and culture. To be fair, when he went by Lanczú Riza, everyone mocked him," Ilinsa said. "It became quite bad. It did go overboard, but you must admit that it is quite silly. Who needs that many names?" Brialenio said. Menzisno and Rileza Aria sighed. Ilinsa looked over at him. "You have twice as many names as he does." "Yes, but I have not two first names. We just have many last names," Brialenio said. "We do not expect people to say it all." "Anyway," Rileza Aria said, "Elinsco Riza was captured on the day of rising, but escaped last night, and we don't think he could have escaped alone. Do you know anything about it?" Menzisno laughed. "So that boy finally got himself in trouble. Knew it was going to happen someday. Look, I'm almost 65. I've already been through this mess once. I know how it works. I ain't no hero. Last thing I want is trouble. Besides, if the boy got himself in trouble, then good. Maybe it's finally knocked some sense into him. Just hope y'all don't kill him." "How pragmatic," Ilinsa said, suddenly realizing why Lanczú had not told anyone who his grandfather was. Menzisno sighed. "Ain't that glorious, but I'd rather be alive. Don't expect y'all to understand." "What about Anshun?" Rileza Aria asked. His face darkened. "And now you listen here. Ingisma didn't have nothing to do with this. I can tell you she ain't done nothing but helping her family and taking care of her baby. The most she's done for him is pray." "I see," Rileza Aria said. "Where were you last night?" "Here, coming back from some business with the Natya. Sure plenty of townsfolk saw me," Menzisno said. "I see," she said. "Well, I guess we're done here. Lensa, Brialenio." Brialenio was thankful she had not shortened his name. Ilinsa was a little uncomfortable with it, since she did not like Rileza Aria that much, and was used to only people she was very close to shortening her name. "I believe we are done as well," Ilinsa said. Brialenio nodded. "I do not know why we bothered with someone like him in the first place." Menzisno pressed his lips together. Ilinsa sighed. "Goodbye," she said. They stood and left. "So what do you think?" Ilinsa asked. "He's telling the truth about him and Lanczú Riza. They don't like each other much. Menzisno wants him to take over, but Lanczú Riza wants to be a soldier. Actually, it's why he can't read. He didn't want to learn out of spite." Rileza Aria looked at Brialenio. "Spite for y'all too, by the way." "He became quite defensive when we asked about his daughter," Brialenio said. "So much for not wanting any trouble." "He is protective of her. She is his only living child, and she just had a baby," Ilinsa said. "If someone said that about my children, I would react in the same way." Really, it would be more suspicious if he did not act defensive. Rilesa Aria nodded. He don't like that she married a shepherd, but he loves her. They checked Minzy's snow story and it lined up. They also asked if anyone had seen someone suspicious. They got some useless answers, but some said they had seen a cloaked figure, dressed in black and carrying someone. They said he was large, but could not provide any further information on his appearance. They went south. Brialenio suggested that a Soledo might have done it, which got him some dirty looks from both women until he specified that it was because of their skills, not their reputation. Rilesa Aria doubted it, but they still questioned a few. Rilesa Aria said she wanted to question Zebbocron, since he and Lanczú had left the same day. Brialenio found the idea laughable. Elinsco wondered if they were talking about the same boy. Rilesa Aria agreed it was out of character, but they were still connected, and the townsfolk had described the person they saw as large and dressed in black. Zebbocron was a large boy and certainly had black clothes. Elinsco and Rilesa Aria found looser clothes, and the former an inordinate amount of pins, and they rode to Miravine and to the Aquinsa estate. They took a break for Dralirviesh, then asked to speak to Zebbocron. They were told to wait, as Duke Garendo was busy. As they did, Elinsco busied herself securing her wimple and making sure her hair was neatly under it. Rilesa Aria adjusted her hood, and Brialenio tried to see how quickly he could draw his sword. Duke Garendo was an older, taller, blonder, and more arrogant version of Zebbocron. That he could be outclassed in either of the latter two was a great surprise. Brialenio fixed him with a look that roughly translated to, "If you touch a hair on their heads, I will kill you." Duke Garendo looked at Elinsco, though Brialenio always spoke, and he acted like Rilesa Aria did not exist, which both relieved and offended her, though she had been expecting it. Elinsco wished she could just take a bedsheet and put it over her head. Brialenio told him what they were there for and asked if they could question him and his family. Duke Garendo said they could question him, Duchess Jacintelia, and Zebbocron, but if they wanted to question Lord Echagrin, they would have to wait since he was out. And he led them to a room where Zebbocron was having tea with his mother. Duchess Jacintelia somehow managed to be taller than both her husband and son. Rilesa Aria was starting to wonder if someone was conspiring to make her painfully aware of her height or make her neck sore. Or both. Duchess Jacintelia was statuesque, slender, and angular, with green eyes. Her wimple was embroidered around the hem and trimmed in lace, and a little of her golden hair hung out in two braided loops. A young maid stood to the side, watching the teacups carefully. The conversation stopped abruptly when Duke Garendo entered, and the maid practically jumped. Duchess Jacintelia smiled, but it looked a little strained. "Good morning." Zebbocron noticed Brialenio, and his smile was real. "Lord Brialenio! How wonderful to see you! And Lady Elinsco, you look lovely today, as always." He noticed the slight tightening of Duke Garendo's jaw, and his smile became a wince for a second. "Good morning," he added hastily. "Oh, José Quiso, is this your Lessian friend, Duchess Varilinia's brother?" Duchess Jacintelia asked. Brialenio smiled. "He has mentioned me." She nodded. "Oh, yes. I'm quite glad he has found such a great friend." "Indeed," said Duke Garendo. "Now what is this about?" "We are investigating the escape of a prisoner, Elinsco, Brialenio said. "Oh, so Ulboredagos escaped?" said Zebbocron. He had started to say a more insulting synonym to that, but caught himself, remembering his father was in the room. Duke Garendo's eyes narrowed, and Zebbocron almost winced. "Quite surprising. He looked half dead the last time I saw him. Technically the truth. When I was sent to bring him his food, he seemed to barely have the strength to drag himself to his plate." Brialenio nodded. "Indeed, which is why we believe he had help." Zebbocron barely stopped himself from laughing. Even though he had done it, the idea still sounded ridiculous to him. "And you think I did it?" His parents looked offended. "You think my son would betray his king for a borgno?" said Duchess Jacintelia. Duke Garendo shot her a glare and she flinched. Zebbocron's face darkened for a second. "It is a mad thought," said Duke Garendo, though he was looking more at Zebbocron, who was avoiding his gaze while trying to look like he was not. My son would never free a boy like that. 6 years ago he freed Fieso of Carvigno and Deoliro and Ulvsvio Zivero of Silvino from your own dungeon. All Soledo farmers, said Rileza Aria. Zebbocron stiffened. Duke Garendo looked surprised that she had spoken, then recovered and practically glared at Zebbocron. Duchess Jacintelia looked almost disgusted by her accent. A bonio socio! Zebbocron smiled a little, but it was nervous and strained. Mossa! She is a girl. It should be bonio socia. Of course, Duchess Jacintelia said, laughing nervously as well. How rude of me! Brialenio would have laughed if he were not worried. Duke Garadezzo's practical glare had become an actual one. The color drained from the faces of his wife and son. Brialenio's eyes narrowed. A mistake! Zebbocron said, putting his hands behind his back. What happened with the Soledo was a mistake. Something I would never repeat, least of all for someone like that. So why'd you do it? Rileza Aria asked. I was a foolish boy, Zebbocron said. I was blindly rebelling against my father and made a great mistake. Were you blindly rebelling when you went against him during the trial? Of course he was, Duke Garendo said. It seems you know nothing of that event, unsurprisingly. He testified against me and spoke lies because he was a foolish, rebellious child. Now I am sure he has grown wiser and would never do something like that or what he did for those Soledo again. Duchess Jacintelia nodded. And he is no traitor. He would not betray the king for some Bavarian farmer. He betrayed his father for 3 Soledo farmers. Also, Elinsco Reza ain't no farmer, but the grandson of Menzisno Neslicier. Zebbocron blinked. He is? Well, I did not know that. And in any case, that makes it worse. Neslicier is a corrupt and greedy merchant. Sorry for the redundant description. I would not help his grandson. As for the first point, we have established that Giuseppe only did that in childish rebellion, which he has grown past, said Duke Garendo. Stop this foolish talk, girl. Rileza Aria stopped, suddenly remembering whom she was talking to. He did not like it, but Brialenio decided he should take over. The reason we are questioning you is because you left on the same day the boy escaped. What was that for? For what reason was that? Duke Garendo muttered. Duchess Jacintelia and Zebbocron barely suppressed sighs. Zebbocron might have been a grammar warrior, but he drew the line at this. Brialenio blinked. What? You wanted a sentence and a preposition, the Duke said. Oh, he's one of those, Rileza Aria thought with a squashed sigh. So that is where he gets it from, Brialenio and Elinsco thought. All right. For what reason did you leave? Brialenio asked. You know why, Zebbocron said. I wanted to be with my family for Drolievyesh, and have an excuse to disappear after freeing Lanczú. All right. Where were you Shemachludi night? Rescuing Lanczú and running south, but he could not say that. I was asleep. I packed my things, and if I recall correctly, you were there. Then went to bed and rose early to depart for Miravine. Technically the truth. He had not actually slept, but stayed awake until the only others who was the night guard, then freed Lanczú and spent the rest of the night running. How did you come to Miravine? Brialenio asked. I paid a man to take me here, Zebbocron said. Did you not have your own horse? Why did you not take one from Linziso? No, we thought he would be coming home with us, Duke Garendo said politely. I was supposed to guard Linziso's gates that afternoon. Trying to get out of it seemed like more trouble than it was worth, Zebbocron said, almost defensively. And you need all the horses you can get at a hard time like this. Though you are quite eager to come home this jolly voyage, said Duke Garendo. In previous years, you have always seemed to have some reason not to. With everything happening, I wish to make sure you are all right, Zebbocron said. Is it really so suspicious that I would want to make sure my family is safe during this chaotic time? It is when you have previously shown little concern, Duke Garendo said. He writes often, said Duchess Jacintelia. To you, perhaps. He hardly writes to me. Really? Zebbocron said. Do you not think there might be a reason for that? The moment he said those words, he blanched and stiffened. Brialegno paled as well. Duchess Jacintelia gasped and covered her mouth with her hand. Elinsco's eyebrows rose. For a moment, the room was as quiet as a perpetual adoration chapel. And what reason might that be? Duke Garendo's voice was low, but he might as well have screamed it. Zebbocron practically jumped. Excuse me, are we questioning him or are you? Brialegno said. Duke Garendo stood straight, and some of the color crept back into Zebbocron's face. Lord Josebo, who took you here? Brialegno asked. Zebbocron frowned. I never bothered to learn his name. Not more than his first name, at least. Some middle class Sanavan, he continued. His voice was strained. Eshakiso sent you a letter, Duchess Jacintelia said. Did the messenger find you? Zebbocron nodded. He did, and I believe you should wash his mouth out with soap with what he said. May we speak with the messenger? Brialegno asked. Duchess Jacintelia nodded and sent her maid to find him. The messenger said he had delivered the letter Shemachludi afternoon and seen Zebbocron with an unmarried man dressed like a Sanaran around 30 with dark hair and blue eyes. Brialegno asked if there was anyone else with them, and he said there was not. The messenger left. The townsfolk of Soledo said they saw a figure in black, described as being tall and large. One of your house colors is black, and you are quite tall, Brialegno said. Everyone has black clothes, Brialegno, Zebbocron said, especially during this chaotic time. It is wonderful that the true king has returned, but it was not bloodless, not to mention during a war. Besides, we have just exited Quinia. Plenty of people wear dark colors then, and I assume it was night time. Even with Riza almost full, it must have been dark. Riza was the larger moon, and the main one the Adelicic calendar followed. I suppose, said Brialegno. Zebbocron smiled a little. So will we stop this nonsense? The idea that I, of all people, would do something for someone like him? You have met my parents, have you not? No matter what foolish things I did when I was younger, I am wiser now, and would not make that mistake again. Elinsco sighed, finally speaking. It is quite far out of character. Quite far out of character is an understatement, Brialegno said. I guess, said Rileza Aria. So then, will you stop this nonsense? Duke Garendo said. Brialegno nodded. I suppose we will. He looked up. Though, before we leave, I would like to speak with Lord Josebo. Alone, please. Duke Garendo nodded and motioned for everyone to leave the boys alone. They left, and Brialegno closed the door. Brialegno turned to Zebbocron, his face concerned. José, are you all right? Brialegno said. I considered that the rumors might be true, but this... He stopped, then looked up. I cannot let you stay here, José, not knowing what he might do to you. Nothing will happen, Brialegno, Zebbocron said. They are rumors, that is all. Well, there is clearly some truth to them. I saw the way he looked at you and the way you reacted, Brialegno said. That was fear, José. Just because we Lessians do not like lying to the world does not mean we are blind. Zebbocron said nothing for a minute, then looked at his friend. And what would you suggest I do? Come with us, José, Brialegno said. Come back to Soledo. And then what? Live in exile until my father dies? Zebbocron retorted. It is better than living here in fear of him. Zebbocron said nothing for a moment. Then his expression became impassive. I do not live in fear, Brialegno. Brialenio looked up. José, no. Those rumors are false, Brialenio, he said. He has never hurt me, nor my brother, nor my mother. I will be all right. José, you cannot. Nothing will happen to me, Zebbocron said through gritted teeth. Brialenio stopped for a moment, then sighed. I will not stop. Remember, you can always take my offer. I will not need to, Zebbocron said, his face and voice devoid of emotion. Brialenio sighed and left. Zebbocron went to his room and got drunk. Brialenio met up with Jarissa Aria outside. Oh, good, you are back. So what do you think? Elinsco said. She had wanted to wait until Brialenio returned to talk about this. I can't tell, Jarissa Aria said. He was nervous, but I ain't sure if it's because he's guilty or he was worried about how his Bob's gonna react. Brialenio fidgeted and glanced back at the castle. Elinsco nodded. I think he was scared of his father. He became the most nervous when you mentioned what he did for Fiesole, and the only time the Duke looked angrier was after his wife and son's comments about you. I would argue he was the most nervous after the Duke saying he rarely wrote, Brialenio said. Elinsco nodded. That certainly has some merit, and it would add to the idea that he was scared of his father, not us. Jarissa Aria sighed. Let's get back. Ethicica's investigation was similarly fruitless. Zebbocron did not appear in public for a few weeks after. His mother was rarely seen as well. Ethicica sent someone to look for Lanczú at the rectory in Soravigno. Zefia had managed to color his hair, but used a glamour to make it look better. It held firm, as did their story. Luz Moroja had come north to look for Lanczú, but then a boy had brought a berated pilgrim who was robbed and left for dead by the road. She knew him since he was a farmer from a village near Bori, and decided to stay with him until he was safe. Ethicica looked for him in a few other places, but could not find him. She asked Garendo if he knew anything, and he said he did not.